You're listening to Greater Good Radio Hawaii. Please visit us online at greatergoodradio.com. Today's guest is Mitch D'Olier, President and CEO of the Kaneohe Ranch Company and the Harold K.L. Castle Foundation. Mitch shares with us how his company is able to award grants to nonprofit organizations at an average of $7 million per year. So, Mitch, what's your philosophy on whether or not business people should give back to the community?
You know, that's always been modeled for me about how Hawaii business leaders have behaved in my experiences. And so my first mentor was a lawyer named Marshall Goodsell. I worked for Marshall when I came to Hawaii. I was trained by Marshall. A lot of what I know initially is from Marshall. Marshall was giving back all the time privately as a philanthropist. Business leaders that I worked for always were involved in community activities. Herb Cornell, Bill All, Jack Magoon, Ed Carter, Malcolm McNaughton. Many, many Hawaii business leaders touched my life and brought me into charitable causes that they were involved in. They really led me by example more than anything else when I think back about that. And it was a natural thing to do. I've talked a little bit about giving back, and I've talked about the impact of philanthropy. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that I really worry that we really need to do for the future of Hawaii is nurture new philanthropy so that the next round of successful business people give of their time and their treasure to build assets for the future of this magnificent place.
That's what our show is about. But, you know, there's a lot of people out there that are so focused on their careers, you know, new up-and-comers, that we think, there isn't any time to give back to the community. What would you say to people like that?
I'd say a couple things. And that's, by the way, that's $1 million question. That's a really cool question, Carrie, and thank you for it. I'd say two things. First thing, in the beginning, any journey is a series of baby steps. So give a little bit of money to Aloha United Way. Give some money to your church or something that you care about spiritually, and give a little money to a community organization. And then at some point, once you start to emerge as a leader, people will ask you to help their causes. And if they ask you to help as a volunteer, look into your heart and take on the causes that you're really deeply passionate about. Because if you're deeply passionate about it, the causes will take you over.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any examples of maybe a story that sticks in your head of where this money or this philanthropy has really made a huge impact?
I got a trillion stories.
Maybe a couple.
One, I was involved starting from about 1976 in Boys and Girls Club of Honolulu. But back then it was even Boys Club of Honolulu. And, you know, I'll look Carrie in the eye and say, well, we weren't quite visionary enough to know that we were supposed to have girls back then. But Donis Thompson and a few others taught us our lesson. I was involved early on because Charles Spalding, a local businessman, another mentor, was deeply involved in Boys Club of Honolulu. And he asked me when I was felt like I was 15 years old, but I was really older than that, would I go on the board of Boys Club of Honolulu? And I thought really about it, and I asked Mr. Goodsell about it. And he said, well, really, it's a matter of, Mitch, are you really passionate in your heart about it? Because if you just do it for your client, or if you do it because you think it's good business for the firm, that's not a good reason. He said, but if you're really passionate about reaching out to disadvantaged kids, then you should do it. And I thought back where I grew up on the south side of Chicago, and there was a YMCA in my neighborhood. And being able to play basketball at that YMCA gave me activities that kept me out of a lot of activities that probably would not have been good for my future. And I thought about that, and I said, you know what, we need more stuff like that in Hawaii. And so I was involved with raising a little bit of money to take Boys Club of Honolulu to Waianae. And we had just hired a new executive director, at that time a young man named David Nakata. I'm probably one of the people in Honolulu who can tell you once upon a time David Nakata and I were both young men. And David and our board struggled over a decision about whether we should actually build a facility in Waianae. And common sort of on the street downtown Honolulu thought was, well, you can't build anything out there because the community won't take care of it. It's just not going to work. And David spent a lot of time going door to door in the community, talking to the businesses, and raising Waianae money, while some of us raised small bits of money, to plant a Boys and Girls Club in Waianae. Now, I have been witness to a number of stories of kids whose lives have been changed by the work of David and his staff in Waianae and in other places. I will tell you the whole experience of living through that campaign back in 1977 and 1978 changed my view of how you need to be entrepreneurial, and that with a small action, even in a small part of a campaign, you can make a big difference in the lives of a lot of people.
Thanks for joining us today on Greater Good Radio. For more information or a transcript of today's show, please visit us online at greatergoodradio.com. This is your host, Evan Leong and Carrie Leong, saying please join us next time for another episode of Greater Good Radio, Hawaii.